Imagine a riverbed in Mars which is bone dry ever since the dinosaurs have walked this earth. Now, the Mars Perseverance rover is going through this riverbed collecting rock samples. It collects a rock which has some components of iron and phosphate in it, which is famously now called as the leopard spots. But if you look closely into the rock, it has the essential components which usually microbes release. Now, the final question which comes to our mind is, are we still alone in this universe, or was there life on this Mars? Now, this rock, which is the size of a crayon, is in a titanium shielded tube in the Perseverance rover, having a one-way ticket home. Let's answer this question. Are we alone in this universe in today's video? Hi guys, in today's video, let's see the recent discovery by the Perseverance Mars rover in Mars. It is July 2024 and the Mars Perseverance rover is going in the region of the Cheyava Falls, which is situated in the Jezero Crater area. In its ice, it finds a boulder-shaped rock which stood out of many. The navigation system picked it up, and for weeks they carefully polished it using the rover to find the correct area to drill. And they drilled and they took a rock at the size of a Sapphire Canyon, they called it. That is, this rock was the size of a finger and it was famously called as Sapphire Canyon, and the data began to come. When they examined the data, they found out something exponential. That is, there was carbon, iron, phosphate, which are signs of life, but it was found in the previous Mars missions also. This Perseverance rover only has shown us that before. But what they found out was, hidden in this iron and phosphate were the presence of the concentric rings of iron and phosphate. This usually happens on Earth when microbes in a chemical process the carbon and they form these concentric rings. Before, we have got patches of evidence of life in Mars, but this gives us a lot of proof that life existed in Mars, because the physics can be a coincidence, but the chemistry of these concentric rings of iron and phosphate are present in Mars. The same thing which is present by microbes in Earth is not a mere coincidence. This tells us that living things ate, breath, and left a chemical signature for us to find in Mars. For anything to be declared true, you need evidence. Now let's see the evidence for this. The evidence we found in Mars is similar to the evidence of the signatures we find in Earth. That is, this pattern is repeatable in that rock, meaning that it is consistently present in that rock. This classic mixture of carbon, iron, sulfur, phosphate released by microbes in chemical processes is consistently found in this rock as in the form of concentric rings, and it is very similar to what it is found on Earth. Also, the carbon component which is found on these rocks is in the form of a light carbon, which is essential for metabolic processes in our human body. Also, the phosphorus which they found in that rock is present in the edges of these famous leopard spots, which are also consistent with what we find on Earth. Also, the area which they found it, the Cheyava Falls region, is an area which is carbonate rich, which could have shielded this signature from radiation. Usually what they say is, if living things would have been in Mars and got extinct, this radiation would have evaporated all the signatures that they were alive. But with this carbonate rich rocks present in the Cheyava Falls region, they could have shielded this mixture of iron, sulfur, phosphate and carbon from the radiation, and that is the reason why we are being able to find such an important evidence for life in Mars. Was this finding just a coincidence? No, this is the culmination of 50 years of hard work. Ever since the Viking landers landed in 1976, where it fed Mars a nutrient soup and it got a radioactive burp, showing chemical evidence that life was present in Mars. But there was no definitive proof, and for decades we were fighting whether life is there in Mars, there is no life in Mars. Then we sent orbiters around Mars which mapped the full Mars, showing where rivers could have flown billions of years back. Also, now in 2012 we sent the Curiosity rover in the Gale crater area, which showed methane spikes, which showed that some evidence of life existed in Mars, but there was no foolproof evidence. These were just patches of evidence. That is why this Jezero crater was particularly selected for this mission, because this Jezero crater area has this carbonate rich rocks present in them, which can shield any fossil from radiation such that it can be preserved. Also, this Perseverance rover, when going through the Jezero crater, did not just find a rock and it found these leopard spots in this Sapphire Canyon rock. No, it took 24 samples and 4 Earth years later, with diligent data, when they saw that these leopard spots existed in the 24th sample. So this finding of evidence of life in Mars is not a coincidence or luck, but it was a reward for hard work and perseverance. So will we ever get this rock back to Earth is the question in everybody's mind. There is a mission which is planned. If all goes according to plan, a rover will be sent to Mars. It will travel to this Perseverance rover, take this rock and put it in an ascent vehicle which will fire off and come back to Earth. Now once it comes back to Earth, then what will happen? We have the best instruments here which no rover could ever carry, and we can dissect this rock with leopard spots layer by layer and find out what is there in it. See, for eons now, we know that Earth and Mars exchanged meteorites. And if suppose we find this evidence of life in Mars, means that not only Earth life is there, but in Mars also it is there, meaning that in other galaxies also life could be there. But what does it mean if the results come negative? That is also okay. With so much instrumentation, we find out that these rocks which showed evidence of life was just a false positive result, and that there is no evidence of life in Mars in this rock. Then we can think that the chances of life forming in this Earth is very thin. That is, we call it as the Goldilocks zone. That is, the chance of life forming in this world is a size of the hair only. That is, we have a very minute chance, and there should be a perfect mixture for life to form. Either way, whether the result is positive or negative, we can get evidence that there was life in Mars or not, which will help us plan our future missions in Mars, and also think about this inhabitation of humans in Mars, whether it is feasible or. So has NASA found life on Mars? No, not yet. The question was if there was life in Mars. Now the question has shifted is, when was there life in Mars? See, this is not a full confession, but it is just a fingerprint. But fingerprints are what which cracks cases wide open. So wait until 2035 when the rover goes and picks that rock and come back. Then we can dissect it further. Till then, look up the skies, and whenever you see Mars, just realize there is a rover, and for the first time in human history, we have a rock there in Mars waiting for a ride back home. Do like, share and subscribe me for more interesting videos like this.